Hello to everyone. Welcome to watch the first video lecture in our R course. This course is all about doing the data analysis or data science with the R software. And so in this first video lecture we look how to install the R software and what are the first needed steps to get your code running in R. So we start by looking at how to install the R software in your computer, and the starting place here is now this sort of a website where you can find the R software. R is a free software and you can find the installation file in this R web page, which is given here. And in this video we now look the steps what is needed to do in order to get that R software installed in your laptops or home computer. After you have successfully installed the R software, then you have an option to install also this what is called as a R Studio, which is this sort of an integrated development environment for R software. But this is only optional for you, so you can proceed by installing the R Studio also, but I'm using during this course only this what is called as a basic R software, and I'm not gonna use the R Studio, so you can manage to pass this course by simply installing this R software in your own computer. Of course, you can find R software in any computer class in university, so if you don't have your own computer, then you can go to the computer rooms and use data software. So to start installing the R software, we go to this R software website, and once you click there you should be able to get this sort of a page, and you can find the installation files here on the download and grain. So you should click here, and then you have to select some sort of a mirror site where you can find the installation files. For example, I now choose this sort of a place like Denmark, so this is like doing the traveling now. So you can pick any other place if you want, but it's of course useful to go somewhere close where you are living, and since there's no actually place like Finland here, so we need to go abroad, in a sense that this is probably one of the closest place you can find these installation files. So my computer is a Windows computer, so the first is to understand what's the operating system you have in your computer, and since mine is a Windows, I go for here what is called as a download R for Windows, and I click here. And then what we are now doing is that we are installing what is called as a base R system. So we click here on the base subdirectory, and then we just click the download this latest R version, which is now happens to be like 3.5.1. And of course you can now look the installation and other instructions, or just follow this extra video now and see what we are doing here. So if I now click to this download R link, it opens up this sort of a pop-up, so where I can now choose where to download this installation file, save as, and I put it here on the desktop so I can find it easily. And then we just wait once it has downloaded a file. So once we have been able to get the installation file like here, then we just proceed normally as in any software installation, so that I double click here and then we go forward with different menus and questions asked during the installation process. So we start the installation by double clicking this installation file, so I will do it like here. And do you want to run this file is asked, so I said yes. So first we choose the language we want to use during the installation. I keep it as an English. Then we read the license carefully. Next. Then we choose the directory where we want to install the software. This is fine for me, so I push next. This is fine for me. Next, 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 and then the installation will start. So once the installation is over, it gives you this sort of a window. We can click here now, finish, and if we now go, for example, here on the start menu, you should now find out that there is, for example, this sort of a link where you can start the software. And for example, for me, since I have installed the previous version of R, I can find here, for example, different amount of R's, but this last one was the one which we were installing, so 3.51 should be the one that you will now find somewhere in your start menu if you are now using the Windows operating system. If you have some other operating system, you should be able to install the software similar way and then start the software by clicking this sort of a link or icons. Once we have now successfully installed the R in our computer, we may now consider installing the R Studio also to the computer. So if you want to install the R Studio, then you should go to this website given here, and if you click, you could end up into this place where you can find the R Studio and also many other interesting programs related to the R, like Shiny and so on. However, if you want to now install this R Studio, which is like a developing environment for R code, then you can click here for download the R Studio, and then there's a different R Studios available, and but if you can find here like a free version, which is an R Studio desktop, then you can continue here for download and then select maybe, for example, if you have a Windows program, here to install and then continue. As said here, that R Studio requires at least this sort of a version of R, but now after we have installed the software, then we can continue with also installation of R Studio. However, for us, this R Studio is not necessary program. We can continue just using this basic R software, and after we have installed our software, we then may consider installing some packages. So the R is the base R which we have now installed. It contains a lot of different functions and different methods to do data analysis, and this sort of a function that which gives us the possibility to read the data set and do the outputs. But then there's a lot of different packages which kind of give new features to the R and so on. And for us, what is for a useful package for this course is what is called this Tidyverse, which is can be installed freely for the top of the R system. So if we now go to this R, we first find out where it locates. So if I go here for all the programs for me, and then I go to the R, well, I have a lot of different versions of R installed here, but here is this latest one, and since my computer is this 64-byte version, I use this R given here like 3.51, and once I click it, it opens up the R in this way. So after you have installed the software, you should be able to start the software, and this is the first appearance of software. What I do first is that I go here for edit and guide preferences, where I little bit change the font so that you can see a little bit bigger in this lecture video what is happening here. So this is basically what you should see, and here is what is called as a command prompt or interpreter for this R. In R we basically, it's an interpreted language in the sense that we write this code, and then we send this code for this command, which you can, if you push the button enter, then it does something like this, and R then immediately try to interpret the code you have sent to this in this prompt. You can either write it the code here on the prompt straight away, or then the more or better way is to write the code in an editor and then send it to this prompt. However, before we really proceed for seeing how to work with the R, we could look a little bit about these packages, because it's a something that comes up immediately after you have installed the R software. So the idea is that we may have this base R software which we have now installed, and on top of that we may then install this sort of a packages which gives the new functions to the software, which gives new features to the software, and makes it possible to then to use it in a different areas of data analysis. So if I go back to our lecture slides and I click here, I can then get all the possible R packages which are supported by this GRAN websites, and then there's also other packages which are not like in a official, has this sort of official support, but any person can write up R packages and then put it on the web for everybody to use it. But these are kind of packages which are also supported by the mirror site, so that they have been accepted to be part of this large group of packages which gives a different sort of functionality. And for us, one of the big and useful package or the collection of R packages is this what is called the Tidyverse, and it has even their own website. and if you click there, you can then come to these packages, which is said that is a collection of R packages designed for data science. And then there's this sort of a different, it's a basically collection of these sort of a packages which each brings some sort of a new features. Like ggplot2 gives us the way of doing the graphics in R in a very sophisticated way. And now we could install this tidyverse for R, and this is in this way you see how you can install the packages if and when you need to do that when you are doing your own data analysis. So the way of doing it, you can do it by using this R GUI, and here you can find here the packages menu. If you click here, then you can find here what is called install packages. You should click here, and then it opens up this mirror size places. For example, again, I could use the Denmark as my place where I find the package, and then we click the OK here, and after a while it should open up this sort of a list of packages where you can then find the package you want to install, and in this case is this tidyverse which we are looking at. And here, once we know our alphabets, we should be able to find it somewhere here. It's here, and once we have find it on the list, then we can push the button OK, and it should start install this package. It may ask you this sort of a question: do you want to use the personal library or something like that? It depends on what sort of a rights you have. So I click here the yes and yes, so that it will start install the packages. So after a long wait, this R was finally able to install the tidyverse library, and together with the tidyverse there was a lot of other libraries installed. If you have problems of getting this package installation to finish because it takes quite a long time, you may take the option of not installing the tidyverse, and only later when we use, for example, ggplot package, then only install this ggplot2 package when needed. So this is not again maybe the compulsory thing to do to install this tidyverse, but it's a good if you can install it, because then it's install a lot of good stuff to the top of the base R software. So we were finally able to do it, and then in the later we will use many of those packages. One of the things about R is that you always need to use the help sites to find out some things. And for example, if you look here, this help menu, then there's this HTML help, which is probably one of the easiest place to start with the help size. And here's the introduction to R and all sort of things. But then this sort of references to packages, and this is really the list which tells us what sort of packages you have installed in your R. And here is the list. So this was basically what we were just doing when we were installing the tidyverse. It's just install many of these things given here in the first set. You may have these sets put together or separated, depends on really what is your status over the computer. Are you the administrator or not? And here is the list of packages which are kind of included in a base distribution. So there's this what is called as a base package itself. It has sort of a very much the symbol or the functions which are really needed to get the R running, and and for example, if we go a little bit, we can find out here, for example, what maybe even mean, sample mean, arithmetic mean, and if I click here, it tells us how this sort of a function, what is called mean, how it works, what sort of a argument it can have, the function, and even the examples. So R is all about using the already defined function in your code and write this function in a order so that you can get the software to do what you wanted to do. So this is what is called as a functional programming. That's what R is all about. So once you start doing your own code, there's quite soon you need to look how some kind of what sort of things are possible to do with your some function which you need in your data analysis. Anyway, we haven't really done any coding, and that's the very much where we are now proceeding. But to give some sort of tips how to proceed with the program is that it's good practice to define this sort of a home directory where you keep your code and your data sets and maybe graph what you are producing during the analyzing some data sets. And thus for this course I will now create a own folder, own directory where I keep all the code which is related to this course. And I start by going just to the Windows, and I go here for the desktop, and in desktop I could just create a new folder which I, for example, call just R. You can of course give any name you want. And then when I start the program, every time when I start the program, the R, I go here, File, and change my what is called as a home directory or working directory to this place which I just created. And so in my case, I can find this R folder in here, and I choose it as my working directory. So every time I start the R software, I go here on a file, change the direction, and I find the directory which I'm using as my working directory during this course. So you should probably do the same every time you open the R, so that in the end you can then find your code and find your dataset in the right place. So we are now in a position to start really to write the code, and it is or to see what is possible to do with the R. On its easiest, or maybe the first thing what you can do with R is to use it as a calculator. So for example, if I write here on this command prompt, for example, 1 plus 2, and then I push the button enter, I get a solution 3. So this is nothing but a calculator giving the exponential value of 4. That is the neighbor number raised to the power 4, and 4 divided by 5 is 0.8, and so on. So that's pretty much the easiest thing what you can do with the R. Use it as a calculator. But very soon we want to use this sort of a functions, and we want to write this sort of a code that we may need to reproduce it or use it in some other time, and that's why we go here and we push the button new script. So the idea here in R is to open up this sort of a R editor where we write our code. So for example, in this case we could write like 1 plus 2, and once we have written 1 plus 2 and keep our cursor on this line, and if we now go with the mouse to the run liner selection and push this button, then R takes this line and put it, and it sends it to this prompt, and the prompt then tells us what is the output. And same similarly, if I put here exponent raised to the power 4, and if I now select all this stuff and I run liner selection again, then it's again takes all the stuff I select it and sends to the prompt, and it then calculates. But R is about to do this sort of a coding when we are defining some sort of objects, and then we do operation of these objects. So for example, 1 plus 2, we could write it as this way, that we define what is operator called, or the variable called R, and we could define variable called B in this way, and then we could calculate A plus B, and if we now send these things line by line, and then if we write here A on this command prompt and B, we now know that how A and B is defined. And if now in editor we run the liner selection for the code A plus B, it gives us the value 3. And it's useful to start writing code like this. So this could be like our first code. I document it like here. I put one time this sort of a sign where there's which is something that is in R used as whatever is written after that character is not going to be interpreted in any way. So this could be like our first code. And if I now put a run liner selection for this line, it produces nothing. So the interpreter or the prompt says forget about everything what is going on with the after this character. So for example, I could comment this like writing here this is a sum of 1 plus 2, and if I run this line now, again it calculates as 3 but does not use this one. Obviously we usually, for example, define the new variable what is called as a, for example in this case I would call it as a Jarkko, which is now A plus B, and now Jarkko is a value 3, but if I'm not writing it here in any ways, I could just use it as like this, and Jarkko plus 1 is 4, and so on. So it's quite easy to start doing code with R, because you don't have to really define anything straight or classes or anything like that. You just start writing, for example, first use it as a calculator, and then start giving this sort of defining the new variables in this way, and start doing the some operation to these variables, and that's really the starting point. You can give these same things, not using this sort of arrow way, which is I have used here for defining the variables. This is exactly the equivalent to put it as like this, and then write it like here, so that you can use the equal sign if it's more appropriate for you. I will use this arrow sign because this is something which I have learned to do over the years, so it's hard for me to change the way of coding now. So, but you can use it in this way too. So, for example, Jarkko equal A plus B. So that's again same thing as previous. So the idea here in R is to write the code in an editor and then use the run line or selection, and then the output is given here in a R console, or where we can find the R prompt here as in this way. And once we have written our code, we can of course then save it, for example, file, save as, and if I write it as my name as a first R code, and then I save it, then I can go here, and I can look at that this code is now find here. So once we have now saved the code which we have written, that's pretty much what we needed to now know in our first case, our first video lecture, that is to install the R software, maybe to install some packages, or at least in our case to install the Tidyverse packages, and then as a last part, we hopefully now learn the idea that in R we have this sort of graphical interface where we have this sort of R editor where we write our code, then we use this push run line or selection button to send to our code to this R console or to the R prompt, and then the prompt gives us the output which we can then find here. And from now on we then start proceeding like this. So if we have, for example, now we have done our code. If I now stop this program, I can just close it here. It will ask me, do you want to save the workspace image? No. We will go back for these things in a next lessons. So if I want to continue with the same code, I can then start it again simply by starting first the program like here. Then I will change the graphical interface for the font size for you, so that it would be easier for you to read, and then I can find then I change the directory back to the what was the one that I created during this lecture, and I can find it here and here and so on. I can find it here, and then I select it. Then I can find the directory here. Then I push the button OK, and then if I go now File, Open Script menu, then I can find the script. And once I open up the code again, I have it here like it was saved when we first stopped writing our first R code. And then we can continue with the code here and do all the things again. So this is really what we need to know about in our first lecture about introduction to the R, that is, we have installed the software. We should now be able to start the software. We should now be able to start the R editor. We should now be able to write some code here and then send it to the run line or selection. And from now on we start now looking at how to do different things, how to bring the data in, how to create the data, how to calculate some simple things, how to organize the data. And once we know those things, then we go to the little bit about the statistics, how to do some statistical analysis for the data in R, and so on. But it's important that you understand these first steps. You know how to do the installation, you know how to open up the program, you now hopefully know that how to define your working directory. You know that there's this sort of a packages, install packages menu where we can install something top of the base R software, and then this idea of starting maybe a new editor, writing there something, send to go to the prompt. Okay, that's it. We continue in another video lectures then on the subject matters of what sort of functions they are in R that are useful in data analysis.